Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to my channel. Small Talk was created to have small talk, about different topics. But so many people have been requesting me to make videos on certain topics, and today my topic is slavery in Islam. This was not requested, however. I came across a couple of videos of a man. He's a Christian and he thinks he is a scholar of Islam at the same time, and he takes lots of ayahs of the Quran and the ahadith of the Prophet and quotes them out of context, and he traps young teenage boys and girls, and then he basically tries to convince them that Islam is bad and God is bad and our Prophet is Nauzubillah, Satan or devil or whatever the case may be. I don't want to mention his name because he's not worth it. Obviously, he has no knowledge of our deen, and he does not even understand the concept of of slavery in particular. Islamic slavery is not the slavery the way you experience slavery in the West. I want to make it very clear. First of all, Islam did not introduce slavery. Slavery existed for a long, long time in the society, way before Islamic nation came into existence. Slavery existed at the time of Moses, the time of Jesus, and at the time of Prophet, pre-Islamic era of the Prophet. At the time of Moses, we all know the story of the pharaohs, how he used to take captives and he used to make them slaves, and he built an entire civilization on the back of slaves. All those pyramids that were built, they were built on the back of slaves, and they were treated very badly, inhumanly, and that's why Moses, peace be upon him, came to free his nation from the pharaoh. So slavery was not introduced by Islam. First of all, it was not created by Islam. Slavery has existed into the world for thousands of years, and it did exist pre-Islamic Arabia as well. Slavery was very deeply rooted into the society, just like every other societies in the world, pre-Islamic societies in the world. And when Prophet, peace be upon him, declared his prophethood, of course, he was not going to eliminate the slavery in one day. Lots of the commandments that were sent in the Quran, they were eliminated gradually from the society because society was built on these norms. For example, alcohol was very normal drink to drink in the Arabian society. Arabs were alcoholics. They were the first society to exist on this planet Earth before the Prophet. Similarly, riba, the interest, was very deeply rooted into the society, and that wasn't eliminated overnight. Obviously, there were so many, it was eliminated from society in different steps. And same thing happened to the slavery. Slavery existed. There were two types of slaves. First one were the generational slaves. So their parents were slaves, their grandparents and great-grandparents, and just kept going on and on for centuries. And that's the only way of life they knew. They had no other way of life. They did not have jobs. They had no skills. They had no land. They had no homes. They had no businesses. And the only way for them to survive was to live under the roof of their master, serve them, and be fed. But slaves were treated very badly pre-Islamic. And there were other type of slaves were the captives of wars. So in Arabian society, it was a very normal thing that if a tribe won a war from another tribe, there were two things that they used to do. First, they will kill whoever people they could kill, and the ones that were left behind, they will take them as captives, bring them home, and those were their slaves. And the second thing they did if they won the war, they were very proud of their horses, and they were very good horseback riders. So they will run the horses on the dead bodies in the battlefield and smash them to announce their victory. So these are two horrific things that Arabian society, the pre-Islamic Arabian society, used to do. And after the Prophet, peace be upon him, declared his prophethood, obviously all the commandments did not come to him in one night. Quran was revealed in 20 years, actually 22 years of his prophethood. There were so many messages that were sent to him according to the situations, so he can eliminate some of the bad habits that Arabian society had, and he can introduce some of the new habits which could make them a better civilized society. And slavery was one of them. So, and if you look at the history in the early time of the prophethood, of course the slavery existed. The slavery was so deeply rooted into the society. If God had tried to eliminate it in one day, and He sent the commandment to the prophet and told him, "Go eliminate the slavery from the society would have collapsed because and it wasn't just bad for the masters, it was also bad for those who were slaves, because some of the slaves, that's the only way of life they knew. They had no other way of life. As I said earlier, they had no businesses, no jobs, no skills, no lands, no kettles, no crops, nothing. If their masters set them free, and one day they woke up one day and they say, "Go ahead, you're free," where are they to go? 30% of the society or 50% of society was slaves. What are they supposed to do? How are they going to survive? So it was just humanly impossible to do that. And therefore, the commandment did not come in one night. However, showing mercy to the slaves, the ayahs of the Quran were revealed to showing mercies to the slaves. And Prophet, peace be upon him, enforced the mercy towards the slaves so often that whenever companions will commit a sin, he would say, the kafara for your sin is, like you have to pay the price to pay off your sin is by freeing 10 slaves or 2 slaves or 5 slaves. People had so many slaves at the time. Rich people had more slaves because, as I said, you could also buy slaves and you can take them war captives. They were your slaves too. So the people who had money, they would go and buy slaves. So rich people had more slaves. The who were not so rich, they maybe have 1 or 2 or few slaves. So Prophet always encouraged people to free the slaves to pay for their sins. And that was one way of showing mercy and kind of discouraging slavery from the society. And then, and time again, he enforced his companions to show mercy towards the slaves, feed them the same food that they eat, treat them with the same respect that they like to be treated. Pre-Islamic society obviously used to bring female slave captives, and those were their sex slaves as well. And early Islamic, yes, that did exist. It did not get eliminated in one day. But in the Quran, it says that if you married women are not allowed unless they are your right hand captives, means if you brought them from the war. And those women, just to make it very clear, those women that they used to bring from the war, those were not married women. They were married, but their husbands came to fight with the Arabs, and those men were killed. Now they were the widows of those men, and those women were taken as captives, and they were brought home, and they were used as sex slaves. But when the Prophet, peace be upon him, introduced the Islamic laws, he said, even if you do bring them captives, first of all, you have to give them 120 days, or sorry, 90 days to make sure they're not pregnant from their previous spouses. Their spouses were dead, to make it very clear, in the war. So husbands died and the wives were taken as captives. And second, you can use them as your sex slaves because they're your slaves, but it's better if you married them. Does that make sense? So gradually and slowly, mercy was being introduced. Obviously, he couldn't say all of a sudden, no, you can't do this. That's not how it's done. And I'll give you a few examples from so many other commandments of our faith. Like, for example, alcohol. Muslims and non-Muslims, everybody knows that alcohol is forbidden in Islam. We cannot consume alcohol. The pre-Islamic Arabian society was alcoholics. They used to consume lots of alcohol. When the first ayah of the Quran revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, on the topic of alcohol, it said, though it has some benefits, but the harm of alcohol outweighs the benefits, so it's better if you don't drink it. So the very pious companions like Abu Bakr Siddiq, the father-in-law of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he was very close to the Prophet and he was very devoted to him and he was his best friend. Those kind of people threw away their alcohol at the first order that came from the God, the first revelation that came from the God. The other ones, they started drinking less compared to before. After a while, they were going to the masjid to do their 5 salahs, 5 prayers a day, and they were under the influence of alcohol. And during their prayers, they were saying the names of their idol gods, Lat, Manat, and Uzza. That's who they used to worship, the idols. And they were reciting the names of those idols during their prayers. And then the second revelation came, and the Quran actually divides that into three parts. So alcohol was not eliminated from society in one day. The second part of the revelation came, and it said, don't go near alcohol during the time of prayers. Like, so if a Muslim is praying 5 times a day, we all know there's not enough time in between the prayers that we can drink and then get out of the influence of the alcohol and then go to the mosque, pray, and then come home, drink again. There's not enough time to become sober. So throughout the day now, Muslims were not drinking because God commanded them not to go near the prayers if you are drunk. No, they had to quit drinking during the daytime at least until their last prayer of the day. So some companions, they realized that, okay, God doesn't want us to drink, and they got rid of their drinking habit at the second order. Some companions, however, were still drinking alcohol after their last prayer. Then a little while later, the last and final revelation came to the people, and it said, drinking alcohol is an act of Satan, is an act of devil. If you drink, you will be like you are devil. And then all the companions of the Prophet, and it's written in the hadith that the alcohol was running in the streets of Medina because they had pitchers and pitchers of alcohol because they used to consume it a lot. And they all threw them in the streets of Medina and they just got rid of it. So similarly, slavery was not eliminated overnight. Some of the things were still taking place in the early part of the Islam, but then it was discouraged at every step of the Islamic history that eventually it died its own natural death. Second, and I'm going to give you one more example, like why God does things in steps. For example, interest-based businesses are very common in this modern society right now. We cannot live without banks in this country. I'm in the US and I know we buy a house, we get a loan. We buy a car, it's financed. Our kids go to college, we get student loans. You know, we start a business, we go to the bank to get money for the businesses. You name it, in everything of our life, we cannot live without interest. So if tomorrow the government announced that interest-based businesses are banned because they are causing the economic crisis in the society, imagine what would happen to this country. The whole country would just collapse. People will lose their jobs, people will shut down their businesses, kids will get out of college, you know, you'll lose your home because, you know, you just cannot eliminate certain things in one day. And obviously, the God who created us, he knew how the systems are working. So he wanted to make it easy for the human being. And that's why he commanded the Prophet to gradually eliminate the less likable things from the society compared to just doing it overnight, because that would collapse the entire society. So in Islam, riba was mentioned. That when I say riba, I mean interest. The interest is haram, is forbidden, but people were still taking interest on their money that they were lending out to people until Khutbah Hijjatul Wida, the last sermon of the Prophet that he gave at the time of Hajj, time of pilgrimage when he went to Makkah. And at that khutbah he said, at that sermon he said that Allah has forbidden riba, and to set an example, I would forgive all the interest that my uncle Abbas was supposed to receive from those whom he had lent money. Which means, and his last sermon was, he performed his Hajj or his pilgrimage at the very end of his lifetime. Which means throughout his prophethood, even though the ayah of the riba has been revealed and the riba had been forbidden, but it wasn't completely eliminated from the society until the end of his time when he gave his last sermon at the time of pilgrimage. That's when he said, if you take riba, if you get interest, you will be doing war with the Allah Almighty and his Prophet. That was the final sermon that he did. So similarly, slavery could not have been eliminated from the society in one day as well, because it would have caused lots of chaos in the society, not only for the masters, but also for the slaves. Those poor slaves would have nowhere to go. And they could not keep they could not eliminate taking the war captives, because if they had set them free, those people would go back and they'll fight the Muslims again. And obviously, nobody wants war. So they would take them as captives so they can train them to become better human being, and they can just stop doing these kind of things to the other, tribes. And that's why they used to bring those war captives and keep them in their house. But they were commanded by the Prophet to be treated with mercy and with kindness, and that's what companions practiced. There's an example of the Prophet's life that one of the person that he bought him from his master. I think his name is Zayd bin Haris. He bought him from his master. He brought him home as a slave, and he treated him so well that one day Prophet, peace be upon him, said that you're free to go if you want to. And he said, no, Ya Rasulullah, I want to stay with you, because you have shown me such a mercy that I have never experienced before from any of my masters, and I would like to stick around and be with you for the rest of my life. And he ended up being with the Prophet until the end of times. So for those who say, oh, Islam preached slavery, or Islam used to have women as sex slaves, that's not true. Yes, that did exist in the pre-Islamic Arabian society, and in the early years of Islamic society, they were still practicing it, because it was just not possible to eliminate such a deeply rooted system from the society in one day. It had to be gradually eliminated, but it was discouraged at every stage, every point of time, to show mercy, be kind, release the slaves, set them free, give them their bit of money, and do show mercy towards them, do ihsan to them. And the ihsan was maybe give them some money, give them your camels, give them, um, uh, food to eat, or give them a little place where they can have their own house, things like that. And eventually, the slavery died its own natural death. If you have any further questions, this is such a vast topic that if I went into much details and showed you all the ahadith of the prophets and ayahs from the Quran, obviously it will be a 2 hours long video, and I don't want to take that much of your time. But if you have any questions, please ask me in the comment section below. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to it and give my video a thumbs up. Please press the bell icon so when I upload my next video, you will be the first one to get the notification. I hope this video helped understand some of those misconceptions that people have about Islamic slavery. Islamic slavery is not like the Western slavery. We all know what the Western societies have done to the slaves. What Americans have done, what Britain, Europeans have done to their slaves. And even in this modern age and time, the way they have treated slaves was very horrific and bad. Islamic slavery was not like that. It did exist in the early part because it was already existed in the society, but it was eliminated, and it was discouraged so much that it died its own natural death. Until next video, Allah Hafiz.